Here it is, the video nobody asked for, the video nobody needed, and the video that would get me kicked out of the Society of Respectable Fencing Masters if I would have ever managed to get in the first place. My name is Oskar at the Virtual Fechtschule, and today we'll be looking at funny techniques to be used in the 15th and 16th century public fencing matches known as Fechtschule. Why? Because we can. Before we start though, I need to get a little bit of a disclaimer out of the way. Because if I don't, this place will be swarming with orcs by nightfall. Did I say orcs? I meant keyboard warriors. Yes, this place will be swarming with keyboard warriors by nightfall unless I explain why you would do these techniques to begin with. Because they're super obviously not the most efficient techniques out there. If you do them in a modern HEMA tournament, they're 100% not going to work, and I'm also quite sure the ref is going to be pretty pissed. And doing them with naked sharps in the streets is not really going to cut it either. So why bother? The answer is, as always, context. Because HEMA tournaments and street fights are just one of many contexts in which you can fence or fight with the long knife. Taking training seriously is cool, but sometimes just doing something fun from a context that is long gone can be pretty great for its own sake. In this case, in the 15th and 16th century, the Fechtschule was some sort of public fencing event where you could take lessons and fencing competitions. And these competitions, you generally fight as many rounds as you would like or time would allow. Although some Fechtschulen seem to have had an overall winner, which supposes some sort of elimination tree, I guess. And these fights would be fought in a certain number of previously agreed on rounds, and these rounds would be fought with counted blows. In German-speaking lands, the fight was generally won by the person who, over the course of those rounds, would have scored the highest bleeding hit. The goal here was, of course, to show your skill as well as control. Because throwing punches, kicking, thrusting, hitting with the pommel, throwing and rushing in were generally not allowed, and hitting too hard was also frowned upon. Anyone who did would be subject to summary punishment in accordance with Rule 34. No, not that Rule 34, I mean Rule 34 of the Prague Fechtschule Ordinance. That means that if you misbehaved, you'd get beaten with a shovel. I mean, I'm pretty sure someone turned that into it. You know what, never mind, let's move on. The goal was of course to show your skill, but also to impress friends, relatives, neighbors, settle some scores and perhaps even make some extra money. Gambling and throwing coins at fencers to encourage them was strictly forbidden in a lot of cases, but to me that indicates that might have just happened quite a lot. And then what better way to attract attention to your fights or get even with your childhood bully than by pulling a fencing technique so ridiculous people will still be talking about it 500 years later. As such, Hans Lecküchner's fight book has not one, not two, but three pretty ridiculous techniques that can be used at a Fechtschule. Of course, it isn't said that they cannot be used anywhere else, they might be used in other contexts as well. But generally speaking, these are not necessarily very high percentage techniques, and their primary aim is to be completely over the top and to be used at a Fechtschule. So, let's get going with the first one. Let's do these in order of increasing complexity. The first one is therefore relatively simple. The purse cut. You want to cut at someone's hip. Or if they have shifted a purse over their butt, even better. If you manage to properly land that one on a leather bag, it will probably resound through the entire Fechtschule. This is how you do it. Throw a big exaggerated cut at the left side. As soon as they parry that cut, pretty much cross over your arms like so to load up your right hand for the cut and slap away their right hand with your left. In that same moment, step to your left side. And once you're loaded up, unload the cut and whack your partner with the flat. Top tip for the wacky in this situation. Normally resting your hand on your back is great, but now would be the time to start experimenting with keeping it elsewhere, like on your chest. The second one involves thrusting at your opponent between your own legs. Yes, you heard that right. As the original text says, loosely translated, this is a hilarious piece to use at the Fechtschule. Lol. You start by cutting at your partner from your left side, and then immediately start turning away to your left side while going over their arm with your left hand. Having thus caught your partner, you take your messer by the blade with that same left hand, putting your back to them and bend over to stab at your partner between your own legs. Lecküchner tells you to do it 1 or 4 times. That's oddly specific, well, I guess. And you do that to their belly or to their crotch. If you really use your hip hinge to properly exaggerate your movement here, your partner has no choice but to hop around like an idiot or get stabbed. Hilarity ensues. The final technique for today can have a lot of different end results, but we're gonna go with the variant that uses the sack, because for me that is the most funny one of them all, and also is a relatively safe one for the unfortunate soul getting pretzeled here. Now, I should probably not be telling you about this technique because it is known as the Unnamed. Hans Lecküchner writes that it should not be made public because that would be like pearls before swine. Now that's a bit rich coming from a guy who wrote the goddamn thing down in a book that was copied so many times that it left an indelible influence on German fencing for at least a century after his death. So yeah, I guess I'll just go for it. None of you are leichtfertige Leute, right? No? Okay, very good. I guess I can then tell you about it. You start with an Entrusthout to your partner's left side and make it convincing. After that, drop your knife and grab their right hand with yours. You can of course do it while keeping hold of your messer, but it gets a lot harder that way. Now if you're a bit worried about throwing a messer down on the floor, it's a good idea to have a third person help you out by stepping in and taking away your knife, and then you continue with the technique. So once you have them in your right hand, you step in with your left leg in front of their legs, while also pushing their elbow up. And now comes the tricky part. You cross your right hand over your left in the same way as with the first technique almost. If you get this right, with some practice, you have now folded your partner's right hand into the crook of your elbow. They're locked and have to follow you around, or if you sit down, they must rot underneath you, and if you grab their leg, you could even make them crawl into a sack that your cronies have hidden with them in the crowd. That will get people talking for a while. So, there you have it. When fencing with a long knife just gets a wee bit ridiculous. I'm all for taking this HEMA thing seriously, but at the same time it pays to remember that we do this for fun. So occasionally just doing a bunch of techniques for shits and giggles is a really good way to spend your time, in my opinion. Time to knock this one on the head though. So thank you for watching, and also a very big thanks to all my amazing patrons, without whom doing this HEMA video thing would be a lot harder than it is right now. And if you want to join them, check out the link in the description. And if you want to support the channel in another way, you could leave a like, a comment, or share this video with a friend. It all helps immensely. So, having said all that, I hope to see you all for the next one, and until then, oké doei.